Hi guys, it's Sally and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing about the books that I read in the month of September. There are only 2 more days to September, so I decided to shoot this video. And yeah, I hope you like the books that I read. Most of the books that I read were good. And yeah, since you guys requested, I am going to be explaining about the language of the books as well. Especially if they are difficult to read. So without any further ado, let's get started with this video. The first book that I finished reading in the month of September was The Escape Route by Ishank Khatri, and I would like to thank the authors for sponsoring today's video. Now this book starts off with sort of a love triangle plot, which is not something I'm very fond of. So there are these 3 people, Arush, Ridhima and Jewelsa. Both the girls love the boy, but the boy loves one of them, and I'm not gonna tell you who that was. But the thing is, amidst a lot of controversial issues and problems, the guy commits suicide. And here I got major Murakami Norwegian Wood vibes, but this book is very simple to read, honestly. So after that, these 2 girls, Jewelsa and Ridhima, they go on a spiritual journey, and this book is basically about that, the escape route. Personally, I like the plot a lot, and I like how the author has dealt with this subject, which is very common in teens nowadays, so maturely. So overall, I would say that this book is a good book to get started with. If you have not read a lot of books in the past and you want to get started with something which is not traditionally rom-com but has the elements of it, and not traditionally spiritual as well, but again has elements of it. So the romance and spirituality in this book sort of coexist. Neither can exist without the other. If that interests you, this book will be a perfect pick. However, there's a small problem about this book which actually magnifies, which is the grammatical and spelling errors, which are way too many in this book. I am so upset that the publisher has not actually taken care of it, because even in the blurb I can spot easily 5 to 6 errors in formatting and spellings. And if you read meticulously, it is going to harm your reading experience. So I would like to request the author or the publisher to take care of the final product. But otherwise, this book is a good pick. You would be surprised to know that I read almost 80% of the books in September in ebook or audiobook format. I think 75% of it was in the audiobook format and 5% was probably in the ebook format. And this is one book. There are actually a few books that I read of this author called Fuminori Nakamura. And these are the books that I finished by Fuminori Nakamura, which are all on Storytel, and there are actually more books by this author. The best one was The Gun. I'll say that it's a psychological thriller because there's a crime that has been committed. There's a dead body with a gun beside it, and there's a random person who actually picks up the gun and walks off, and this gun starts manipulating this guy's psyche to an extent that he's no longer who he used to be before he came in possession of the gun. I talked about this book in a previous video of mine, and those of you who are my Bengali subscribers recommended me to read this book called, or rather a short story called Churi by Sharadindu Bandyopadhyay, was it? Yes, and I loved it as well, which is also like sort of a knife which starts manipulating the psyche of a person. So my other Bengali viewers, if you have not read that story, it's available on Sunday Suspense, by the way. So you can get it there as well if you want to. So The Gun was the best by Fuminori Nakamura. The Thief was also good. It's about a thief. I don't think the title could have been any more explanatory. But the one that I did not like was The Kingdom, which was, the plot was really nice, but it was not executed well. It's about a woman who poses as a prostitute to get in touch with high class men, and then she drugs them and clicks compromising pictures with them so that she can blackmail them with those pictures later. But later she sort of falls into her own trap, and yeah, that's basically the story. I did not like it as much. So yeah, I won't recommend reading The Kingdom unless you want to read this plot. But please make sure you read The Gun if you don't read The Thief. Next book that I read was Your Destination Has Arrived by Barry Chima. This was also a book that I got for review, and this is a book about a dog called Bruno, who is awarded with a human life. Bruno has been given a condition and he has to fulfill it as long as he wants to be in this human life. Also, he is sort of having the subconscious mind of a terrorist, which is the unique thing about this book. So I guess if the plot interests you, you can read this book. This book is also very easy to read in language. The next book that I read was a Japanese translation, and this is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. There's a quaint old cafe where there's a seat in which if you sit down, you can travel back in time or forth in time. And I found the story really amazing. It was very moving. This was also on Storytel. And by the way, there's a 30-day free trial of Storytel, which will be in the description below as usual. So if you want to listen to it, go for it. This story actually made me cry. So yeah, this is a highly recommended book from my side. Very easy language. It has Murakami vibes, but it's easier to read than it is to read a Murakami book. So yeah, if you have struggled with Murakami, I think Before the Coffee Gets Cold will be a good pick for you. I am not even ashamed to say that the reason I picked this book up was the title. I really like the title. But yeah, overall, I am glad that I made the decision. The next book that I read was In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. Not related to the Murakami that we talk about all the time, but this author is brilliant nevertheless. Ryu Murakami has written the worst tale that I've ever read, probably. It is so devastating and disturbing emotionally. It's easy to read, but I won't recommend this book for people under 16 years of age because it's very gross and it has violence and very ugly things in this book. But I can't say how satisfying I find it to read something disturbing. I might be a psychopath. And since we are speaking of psychopaths, the next author that I'm going to recommend to you guys is Patrick Suskind. He has written this book called Perfume. There's actually a Netflix series which was inspired from this book, and that's why I came to know of this book. I watched the series. Amazing. 6 episodes, pure bliss. But this guy is a crazy guy. This book talks a lot about the perfume, the scent of people, and the role of scent in biological activities and how it can go very wrong. The next book that I finished reading was The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald. It's a good book, but not a very easy book to read in terms of the plot progression, because most of the people, when they are starting reading, they want the plot to go somewhere amazing. Nothing such happens in this book, but nevertheless, if you like reading, I think you'll like Penelope Fitzgerald's book. The next book that I finished reading was Hear the Wind Sing. This was a Murakami book, a difficult book to read. So if you have read Murakami in the past, it would be no big deal. But if you haven't, I won't suggest you begin with this one. You should rather begin with a book like Norwegian Wood, which is easier to read. Next book that I finished reading was a non-fiction, and this book is called Everything is Figure-Outable by Marie Forleo. I love Marie Forleo. She's such an inspiration in my business side, and I can't tell you how much I adore her, okay? So recently she released this book called Everything is Figure-Outable, where she talks about how everything in this world can be figured out. You don't really need degrees, or you don't really need fancy things or equipments to figure things out. Most of the times it's simple and the solution is right before your eyes. I love Marie Forleo. I have read another free audiobook by her. I forgot the title of the book honestly, but if you just do a little bit of research, you'll find this audiobook for free. And if I can find it, I'll leave the link in the description below. But even in that, she talks a lot about how to do business well. And also, like, when she talks about business, she's not like, okay, make money, make money, make money. She's also about following your passion and being happy. I guess that is why I love her. The next book that I finished reading was a graphic novel on Storytel, and this is called Book Love by Debbie Tung. This graphic novel is about all things bookish. If you're a bookworm, if you love reading books, you're going to relate with this book so hard. I absolutely loved it, and I'm sure that if you happen to read it, you will love it too. The next book that I finished reading was also a review copy, and this is called The Rider's Riddance. This is the series of Samson Rider. The author is Nick V, and I loved this book. I did think that there are things about this book which can be improved though, but the language is simple. If you're a fan of Hollywood movies, this has really Hollywoodish vibes. My boyfriend read this book and he loved it. So, and he's not even a proper reader. So I can say that even non-readers can, I guess, read this book. And the language of this book is not very difficult, but it's not very simple as well. Next book that I finished reading was also a Korean book. This is called The Hen Who Believed She Could Fly by Sunmi Wong. It's actually a story of adoption in allegorical terms. There's a hen who really wants to hatch an egg, but after she runs away from her coop, she's not able to, give eggs. So one day she finds a random egg and she sits on it, and when it hatches, she realizes that it's a duck. But obviously, it's her egg. It was, in her eyes, it was her chicken. And even though it's not a chicken, it's a duck, she loves the duck nevertheless. It's a beautiful story. You have to read this book. If you don't read any other Korean translation in your life ever, just make sure you read this one. The next book that I finished reading is If Cats Disappeared from the World. Once again, a brilliant book. There's a guy who is about to die, and there's this evil guy who is sort of like Satan Death. He comes and says that this guy can actually prevent himself from dying if he makes things disappear from the world one by one. So he makes phones disappear, and it's lovely to see how our lives will be affected by the disappearance of small things. Also, something that I really realized after reading this book is that every small thing around us, the air bubbles, the water, the little dust, the earphone, bathrobes, everything actually make up our world. Without these small things, the world won't be the same. And yeah, I think that's a good realization. The book that I finished reading last was The Dead Girls of Hysteria Hall. This is a scary book, not so much in its content, but it's rather, how do I put this? It's not a good plot per se, but the way it is written is very good. So if you are in for some good writing skills, especially the horror scenes in this book are very well written, you can pick this book up. But this is more for young adults than adults. And the last book, which is a book that I'm reading right now, and since September is not over yet, I think I'll be finishing this within 2 days. This book is called The Farfield by Madhuri Vijay. I have heard only great things about this book. I'm about 3 hours inside this audiobook, and oh my god, it's so good. It's about a girl who goes on a search for her Kashmiri friend, or rather her mother's friend, and comes across the politics that is going on in Kashmir, the struggles of people who live there, and it's a very poignant tale. That's all I can say for now. I have not done reading it yet, but I have the feeling that I'm going to like them. So yeah, overall this month went really well for me. I did not read many bad books. Whenever I find a book bad or not as per my reading taste, I just stop reading it, which is why I can't say that I finished reading those books. So if you want to know about those books as well, which I DNF'd, let me know in the comments below, because then from the next time I'm going to include them in my video. To give you a recap, almost all the books in today's video are very easy to read, except Hear the Wind Sing by Haruki Murakami, and also Perfume is very disturbing, but otherwise all the rest of the books are quite easy to read. And yeah, that would be all for today's video, guys. I'll be back with another video next week. Till then, bye bye.